and go at him from there, since he hasn't been a force one way or the other.
Well, let's see, shall we? We're into bans and picks. The first one out of the gate here for Cloud9 will be Jax. Aim straight in there at the top lane. And an interesting choice there right from the very get-go. What are TPA going to go with? Will that Elise be taken away here? Possibly, but not this round. It's Lulu, which Link has played in both games so far. We should also mention that Cloud9 have run the exact same lineup 2 games in a row. I
think that also increases the priority of Ziggs even more so. Link is a guy who played a fair amount of Ziggs for CLG, even though Cloud9's not a team to play Ziggs normally. The Twitch ban makes a lot of sense, obviously, and we have to point out, since we were just talking about Elise, even though Wins plays a lot of mechanically difficult junglers like Lee Sin, he has 1 game on Elise in the entire season he played in the GPL, and it was a defeat. Yeah, not exactly the ideal scenario. Cloud9's the ones who banned it. Yeah, exactly. All right, we're done here. If we think back, he's played Elise both games in this tournament so far as well. So a ban that maybe suits both teams, or that both teams will have wanted. The final ban in the end for TPA will actually be Kha'Zix here. So keeping the focus on the jungle with Meteos. I wonder if they first pick Ziggs, because I feel like TPA would take it on the return. This is really a question about whether Cloud9 wants to fully go against what TPA has in their picks, or just pick for themselves. And it looks like Cloud9's picking for themselves. Picking for themselves and taking the jungler first of all. Lee Sin here for Meteos, who, as we said, there's no Elise this game, there's no Kha'Zix this game. Lee Sin is going to be his fallback champion. For TPA now, what do they go with? We see a few switches around. Morgana, let's touch on that, even though it's not locked in here, because that is another big one. Lemon Nation has, of course, played a hell of a lot of Morgana. Yeah, he played it and lost with it, I believe, yesterday, which was the first time he's lost to Morgana in 13 attempts, if we count playoffs, regular season, and this. So those are some really nice picks early by TPA. So that will be locked in. And LeBlanc is taken as well, so blind picking the mid lane. What do we think to that? I feel like this is Morning's chance to make a statement. He has stuck to Lulu this whole time. He played 1 LeBlanc game in the GPL, and it was a defeat. It's a highly mechanically complex champion who needs to win the lane to do stuff. And if he gets lane bullied on LeBlanc, he would be even more than useless. It's a statement by him to pick it this early. Yeah, played that in the Taipei Snipers Game 1 in the semi-finals over in GPL, where didn't really go to plan. 4-5-6 was his score, and that Cloud9 here locking in. And, well, I'm wrong talking about Lee Sin, of course. Evelyn now is locked in here for Meteos in the jungle, which means we're going to be seeing a Lee Sin in the top lane for Balls. Yeah, it's got to be. How about that? So Balls, even though he sticks to the normal champions up top most of the time, is known for having really good mechanics. And a lot of the North American mid laners actually on the lower tier teams were the ones that were playing Lee Sin a lot and giving the top teams a lot of trouble with it. So that's actually kind of why we saw Dyrus playing it in the finals. He spent a large amount of time trying to pick it up. There is a lot of lane pressure value that he offers. Cloud9's going to try and use it to their own benefit. I should have learned probably by now not to always just assume when you see those picks coming in. I mean, second half of the season, not much Lee Sin played anyway by Meteos. He played it a few times in the start of the NALCS. But let's move on from that. Lucian taken here for Sneaky. Obviously, he's been going for Twitch so far here at AllStars, but that has been taken away. And we go straight to the other side of the game, because Nocturne locked in here, 4 wins in the jungle, and we're going to see BB taking the Jinx. Nocturne was a big deal in the GPL. It's much more pick prominence over there. But I specifically want to talk about the Jinx because it's more relevant to what happened yesterday. After we saw Sun go off on Jinx in a very nice protective composition where the enemy team didn't have much dive, Taipei Assassins picked a Jinx into a very dangerous composition with many people who can close onto BB. And that's exactly what they did. He died many times in that game. He did not have good protection on Jinx. And it's really BB, I feel like, picking a champion that he can maybe carry the game with if he gets going, but not necessarily the right situation for it. And he's a player who has, when he's got going, pulled off some ridiculous numbers overall. These Draven games earlier on in the GPL playoffs where he'd racked up 16 kills in one game, 19 in another. Obviously, Jinx, a little bit of a different thing, but can certainly get snowballing. We'll see how that all works out for TPA, because Cloud9 have locked in their 2 final choices. Thresh for Lemon Nation and Orianna in the mid lane for Link. It's amazing to think Thresh made it this far through. Yeah. And Oriana was actually one of Link's first champions that he played in the LCS all the way back in Season 3, so he should be very comfortable on that. A fairly, I'd just call almost normal team comp for Cloud9. A lot of everything, or just a little bit of everything. Very versatile is actually the word I'm looking for. Versus the what is actually fairly heavy dive and not much protection coming out from TPA.
One is their final choice for the top lane here. A role which has failed to impress us, I think, so far from TPA's side of things. I think that's fair to say. It's going to be Renekton in this one, and you know, Renekton where you're going to be thinking about having that bullying early to mid-game and hoping to scale well into later things. But as we said before, we've not been super impressed with performance throughout the game, really, from TPA on that front.
Now, Achi has not performed in the games. It's really been about their solo lanes not doing well and BB not being good enough to carry, or just the other teams being too good to let that go and just taking the 5,000 or so gold advantage they get from the solo lanes and steamrolling through the rest of the game. TPA actually hasn't gone much different on that. Things are very reliant on the solo lanes with this team composition, so we'll see if they can improve against Cloud9.
Some big questions to be answered in this one. Cloud9, of course, a win and a loss under their belt. A close win against Fnatic. Their loss wasn't really all that close, unfortunately for them. Obviously, SKT sweeping them to the side. For TPA, this is pretty much do or die. I mean, people are already looking forward to TPA versus Fnatic later on, but those kind of things could be decided before. We're going to find out, and of course, the teams are now loading onto the Rift, so why don't you guys let us know who you think are going to win this game. Send your pick to @LOL eSports and use the hashtag C9 win or TPA win.
And it's so important because we're coming into the second day of group stage here. This game really secures Cloud9 advancing out of group stage if they win. If they lose, there's a very large risk that that 1-3 record would lead them either into a three-way tie or not making it at all.
We are in Europe, guys, I'm just saying, so ties are a very real possibility.
That's where the AllStars are.
We're going to find out here. We are going into game. It's Cloud9 versus TPA. Who's going to get the early start? Again, I'm going to harp on about early aggression. That last game was a bit of an exception. It was just a bit of dancing and faker dodging, which, funnily enough, turned out to be very indicative of how the game was to go on in the end. Will we see any aggression here from Cloud9 and TPA, a team that aren't scared to get dug in at level 1?
TPA had a ridiculous level 1 in their game yesterday against OMG, where they came out on top. It didn't grant them a victory, but it did grant them an early advantage. The GPL was all about level 1, so if we're looking for level 1 experience, it's all on TPA's side.
And again, they must have been watching the last game, dancing in the mid lane between Sneaky and Warning. No bombs to dodge or to catch, which is also a very real possibility when that happens. TPA have got a 3-man team down on the bottom side. From Cloud9's side, it's a little bit more spread out, let's call it. A full line defense covering all the main entries into the jungle on both sides of the map. And there is the vote. 84% of you thinking that Cloud9 are going to take down TPA, which is bigger by a considerable amount than it was with the LOLesports.com vote that we heard a little bit earlier from the analyst desk. So, TPA stacking up here by their red buff. Looks like there's not going to be much of an invade, and if so, it's going to come very, very late here from TPA.
Yeah, we might actually see that game without a level 1. I'm very surprised that it's such a one-sided vote for Cloud9. Obviously, it's probably a heavily American or Cloud9 fan base voting for this particular broadcast, because knowing Cloud9 coming into the tournament without high, hopes were not high for Cloud9. And I did that completely unintentionally, Joe, I swear to God. And TPA, with the championship of the GPL, actually came into this with an even stronger roster than they had during the season. The acquisition of wins from their sister team TPS was hailed as one of the best transactions that any GPL team has made in years, and it hasn't shown through so far in the AllStars.
There's always time to shine while there's still games left to play, as Lemon Nation here being very aggressive onto Jay. You've always got to be very mindful of those bindings. Lemon Nation, of course, went for the Flay here at level 1. We saw that just a couple of seconds ago. We'll see how this all works out. Again, we see back to our old standard. Another game.
Yeah.
2 versus 2 in the bottom lane, 1v1 in the other lanes.
I'm liking it, especially at All-Star, where there's so many players that are just best in role for their region. BB, as far as AD carry is concerned, is just the legend from Season 2, still the last remaining member from that championship team, captain and carry for TPA, against Sneaky, who, by the way, had the best KDA in the North American LCS, really best stats overall as far as AD carries are concerned. That's going to be one hell of a matchup down bottom.
And here we see Meteos. He was the key target for TPA. There's the hook onto Jay. This is trouble. They're going to go for Bibi, though. He flashes away. Now they go towards Jay. They've not got much CC to lock him up, but they'll force the flash nonetheless. Both flashes used by TPA and the heal from Bibi.
That is a huge move right there. Cloud9 burned absolutely nothing. So they will have a huge advantage in that game now, sending them both back to base as well. Next time a hook lands, it could very well be death.
So this top lane, Balls, had a very tough game yesterday against SKT, a game that he'll probably want to just forget, to be honest with you. So far, having a bit of a hard time being bullied around, but you can see keeping up with the CS on that front nonetheless.
Yeah, Lee Sin actually isn't a guy who can take on Renekton crazy early on in the game. He's mainly looking at Lee Sin so he can be more of a late game assassin. He can teleport into fights and really jump around and punish squishies early, plus become a late game split pushing threat once he gets a whole bunch of lifesteal to outlast the tank Renekton who can't burst people down. That's the strategy of the Lee Sin pick there.
Oh, a hook coming through there. Nocturne had actually just shown himself. That's the first, I'm not sure if we can really call it gank from Wins. He just walked into the lane there, was spotted early enough from it, and we can see the Meteos actually replying to this one, just moving down again towards the bottom side of the map.
And an interesting choice by Wins there, going Spirit Stone. Oh, nice binding by Lemon Nation. That's a lot of damage.
Good combo coming in, wasn't enough in the end. There is the hook actually coming down, but they've got no follow-up here, Cloud9. We saw Meteos had already backed away on towards his Golem camp.
And to finish the point on Wins' item choices, this is the slightly nerfed Spirit Stone, where there's a name for this, the Wriggles Lantern, Pharaoh Flare.
There you go.
It would be the nerf Pharaoh Flare if he would have went that route where it takes 30 stacks to transform. Pretty much everyone was building that on Nocturne. He is most likely going for a Spirit of the Elder Lizard, a much older Nocturne build that he's going to be more comfortable with, because as we said earlier, the GPL had a lot more Nocturne picks than the other regions, and that's what he would have been using when it was popular. Doesn't see the need to change over to the Pharaoh Flare.
See that Balls has gone back. We saw him recalling a few moments ago. Has picked himself up a second Doran's Blade in there as well. Wow, that's a max range hook onto Bebe. The Black Shield came down just a little bit afterwards. The CC wouldn't have followed through anyway, but Cloud9 on Lemon Nation in particular, can't fault him for his hooks up until now.
One of the results, though, of BB going back very early in the lane is he's actually got an item edge on Sneaky. Until Sneaky shops and gets a BF sword, they actually can't capitalize on those burned summoner spells. By the time Sneaky ends up shopping, the summoner spells may be back, actually.
Very, very possible from that one. He does have a big CS lead, though, does
yeah.
39 to 23. Just watching this mid lane there, we saw a lot of damage coming through already from Link on towards Morning. If you look at the items, Link has been back, and there's actually the clone being popped. And Link, Flash, Ignite still available, same over the other side. We'll see if any more aggressive action. I can't imagine that will come out of Link. I think harassment and farming is the name of the game for him.
He's not a typically aggressive player, but at the same time, you do want him to try and take advantage of Morning a little bit. He's down about 10 CS. Getting the LeBlanc clone shows he's been getting a lot of harass on him, but that harass hasn't actually led yet to a farm advantage. Maybe once he gets a little bit more ability power after that Chalice and starts building up to the Athenes, we'll see more of that, but it's going to be tricky for Link.
Oh, Sneaky taking a lot of damage. Actually has to just dash away from the Dark Binding. That's the danger that you've got with Jinx Morgana in there. You've got the chain to really put down. Once you land that binding, you put the chompers in position. You've got a lot of time for basically free damage.
This will be the point now as well where Sneaky gets his BF sword. They went back into the double golem, so he's going to be coming back with that big item advantage. While the summoner spells will be back up for TPA, the advantage will be that BF sword, so it's not actually advantage lost, despite them not getting kills while summoners were down.
Morning is going to be gifted the first blue buff for him of this game. Wins just tanking that one up. And it does go over there to Morning. Meanwhile, Meteos, we know him as a player that loves to help balls in particular get going. We talked about this heavily yesterday. Spent a lot of time in that lane, didn't really get the results from it. We'll see if he goes for it here again.
Cloud9 often tries to make balls their top lane carry, and this gank is no surprise.
Low going down, Meteos coming in from the side, and he's just going to throw down a couple of extra hate spikes, but he was already back towards that turret there. It's going to mean the first recall on the TPA side of that top lane, gives balls a little bit of free time to farm.
Cloud9 loves to do repeat ganks or try and use even the harass to get up top to make plays in the jungle. They rely on strong solo lanes to make jungle plays. That's why he has the deep wards. He will do a deep ward into a gank. He wants to smite steal this red.
Oh, this could be dangerous. Here comes Meteos from the side, and there is a smite. Wins, didn't even know what had hit him there.
Well, she was invisible coming in, but Meteos had the timing, and instead of waiting for it to be a smite battle, actually just used a bunch of spells with his smite, so to better secure it from Wins. Great job getting the deep ward off the gank that didn't work into a play that did.
Lemon Nation actually getting a ward down by the blue as well. Are they going to look to control that one next time around? Of course, it was taken a little earlier. Here we go, though. They're going to throw everything down onto Lemon Nation. He just wanted a ward in the enemy jungle, and what's going to happen is he gives up the first blood, and it goes on to Morning.
And that is huge. If we remember the games that TPA did win at the IM World Championships, it's when Morning went off. He was on Ziggs there, but the first blood with the Nocturne gank goes a nice way to helping him against Link in the mid lane.
Bit of a setback as well, considering how well this bottom lane had really gone for them in the previous 9 minutes of this matchup. Sneaky was far and away in the lead. Forced to recall there after there's some damage coming in, and that's only a 10 CS difference.
And additionally, Lemon Nation didn't decide to go for the Relic Shield Thresh build. He's actually rushed the Sightstone, so he's going to slowly fall farther and farther behind Jay in gold, who's went for the very good gold generation out of him in the Frostfang now.
He also just refreshed his red buff, by the way, after stealing TPAs away with his smite, went and took his own. And we'll be just recalling back to home. Want to take a look at the top lane items as well. So that's been somewhat of a quiet lane for us. Good hook landing, but onto the Black Shield, where it basically means very little, let's say.
No CC, but you could still actually jump to it afterwards if you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's one of the weird Black Shield interactions you'll get with that hook.
Oh, damage from Morning. Gets the chains off on towards Link, but again, no real massive damage to come through. Obviously, it was both players starting out towards that Athene's Unholy Grail. Chalice and the Fiendish Codex already there for Link. Just a Chalice in for Morning at this point of the game.
But he's trying to press a whole bunch harder, maybe saving up for completing it outright. There's a lot of similar item builds going on in these lanes, and it's just all about who can actually rush it properly. They go back and buy incremental, and then they trade advantages.
Oh, they're going to get baited into this one. There is Meteos from the side, and his ultimate not really connecting, but they're going to land the Q there. It is going to be Meteos tanking up the turret. Ball gets a kill, and now they're going in with Morning and Link here. Oh, wow.
Way off right there by Link. He was hoping to get a kill. Maybe he can still get it.
I wondered why he'd come straight back into that one. Link getting a massive burst of damage back down onto him. Now Lemon Nation and Sneaky with that extra pressure across the map, actually stepping forward here in the bottom lane, looking for that hook. Didn't quite work out for them, but brings Cloud9 back level in kills and actually slightly ahead in goal.
Oh, the binding
here on the chompers, on the binding. That's a good playback from Lemon Nation. He's going to get ulted up though by Jay. The culling coming from the back here from Sneaky. Super mega death rocket. Flashed away from, don't think he was low enough anyway.
Still a nice trade of skills there. You can see that bottom lane is actually starting to even out a little bit because of that binding. But to get back to that mid lane fight, even though you miss the shockwave, the level 1 shockwave isn't actually what does the damage. It's the ball movement and the command dissonance afterwards. So when Morning came back in, he didn't necessarily take that into account, got bursted down anyway, and nearly died.
Would have been a bad turn of events really for TPA, considering that Morning did get himself that first blood. The farm in that mid lane is very much even as well at 100 to 95. This top lane, once again, who would have thought it? Meteos coming back into the top to try and give balls even more of a lead.
Another gank. I'd almost expect Wins to spend more time up top, but they're really leaving Achi completely on his own. Meteos going to be able to get into that brush. And Nocturne's going to want to gank bottom. There's a chance these ganks could happen simultaneously if the times present themselves properly. No ultimate at the moment on Renekton. It just came back up.
Oh, bit of a face check there from Achian. They're going to dive it. Q landing here from Ball.
All they wanted.
Ultimate use there, and maybe that's all they wanted to bait out for him. That leaves him squishy here by the time it's run out. But look at this TPA. They see Meteos in the top lane. They say, it's Dragon time.
Yeah, they're really thinking about it. His ult was still running when they started this dive. This is real dangerous.
It is dangerous, but I think they're going to come out of it. All right, a flash was used there in the end. There is a Dragon going down, so they trade kill for Dragon here. Super Mega Death Rocket coming across the map. It could be good. It could be good. Oh, so close to Balls. So very close to getting the kill.
Nice shot, I gotta say, from BB, but it wasn't quite enough. The extra shielding of Lee Sin right at the end there was a bit too much. That's very much Cloud9, what they just did there. Willing to consistently gank top, so eventually they force the other jungler to do the same, and that's when Meteos tries to take advantage of him. They did get the Dragon, which means the gold is still incredibly close, but we have to see how Balls can deal with that advantage. Haven't seen him much on Lee Sin.
Morning actually just having a look for Lemon Nation there, just gets back off towards his distortion. Here's a blue buff spawning in. Link, of course, will be gifted that one. I'm interested to see whether Meteos is going to go to the enemy red, which of course he did steal on the last time around. And back to this top lane, both players actually getting that Tiamat in. The only item difference between them, funnily enough, that single Doran's Blade.
Yeah, I mean, it's an 800 gold advantage, which can't buy too many items at this point in the game.
Morning throwing his entire combo in there, and Link's like, nah, you can't burst me down just yet, my friend. Oh, and what?
Just a full
again
camp
into that top lane, camping very, very hard. And Sneaky gonna step forward, actually dodging the Dark Binding. Gonna get some good damage on towards Bebe here as well. Jay, of course, a little bit tankier, can afford to take a couple of those hits. There's actually no one coming down to help. Nocturne's based here, so won't be in position to actually dive in with the paranoia if he needs to help. Meanwhile, Link again gonna be facing some pressure from more.
He's surviving a lot of those trades and still coming out pretty even on farm. And the bottom lane for Cloud9 has been doing spectacularly. It's really bad news for TPA if BB is losing that 2v2. That's one of the reasons Wins can't counter gank the top lane ganks, because he's trying to help out the bottom lane and getting sucked into other parts of the map.
Yeah, I'm trying to bait Link in. Sadly for TPA, Meteos had already had a look there and spotted Nocturne waiting on top of that turret, and in the end Wins decides, okay, not really going to get in with a chance to do anything on this side, so I'm just going to back off. We've also seen Jinx backing away here as well. Bebe picking up that Bloodthirst. It leaves them pretty much even in terms of damage down in that bottom lane. There's just, that, again, that single Doran's Blade that separates the two of them.
Oh, they definitely spotted Meteos out there. He was trying to sneak up, but I wonder if that's going to stop him. Yes, this time they're actually sending aid, but that's going to pull from other lanes. We were talking a bit about Wins earlier and how he hasn't looked great in the games, but he's actually made a lot of really great escapes. He's just constantly having to put himself in bad situations on Nocturne here, where he's got to maybe gank a Renekton who's behind, or just try and brute force a bot lane gank who is also behind. They're hard decisions to make, and while he can be great mechanically, you can't do everything if your lanes are losing straight up.
Lemon Nation getting a bit separated here from Sneaky. If you think back to the 2v2 matchup in the bottom lane yesterday, actually that was a result of or the start of a kill actually for SKT when they managed to separate Lemon Nation away from Sneaky. This time around, Sneaky down to half HP Bloodthirster, as I said before, so not going to have too much of a problem with getting himself back to a healthy position.
152 to 115. That has the potential to get a little bit out of hand late game. Luckily though, if you actually consider the overall gold of the lane, with Jay having that Frostfang, which has actually accumulated him nearly 500 gold, he's substantially ahead of Lemon Nation, and it could end up evening out. Just being down in CS because they're getting more gold from the support items.
Oh, flash in there and flash away just as quickly from Lemon Nation. Meteos had already moved around, puck got thrown out, but not landing really, and a bit of a catastrophe on both sides of things. The flash from Jay, Lemon Nation, good reactions to do that. Now they're pushing out. They must know that Meteos is here.
Yeah, well, Morning had roamed down once again. Or sorry, Morning had roamed down once again on LeBlanc, leaving the mid lane open. He still hasn't been punished very heavily on CS. I almost feel like if that binding would have landed, that might have been a counter gank from Meteos because it would have been right on top of the turret. Really, really tense game here, Joe.
Neither team wanted or really can afford to be making mistakes here. TPA in particular, of course, still chasing their first victory here at AllStars 2014. To see if they can get that here today. Of course, they still have one more game to play after this, which will be our last game of the day against Fnatic. And well, that could certainly turn out to be a big deciding game.
Remember, Cloud9 still has to play OMG, who, even though they lost to SKT today, look very clearly like the second strongest team in the tournament. So this is kind of a must-win for both teams. Cloud9, because they don't necessarily want to fall into a tiebreaker game. TPA, because they want to stay in.
Hook landing again from Lemon Nation. Again, his accuracy with that has been pretty strong. Here comes the TP. They're all going to go towards Bebe. He flashes away. The calling will be enough. It's Meteos actually gets it in the end. Now Jay's coming around. Here is Archie as well from the backside. That's a lot of damage that he's putting out, but he's taking even more back. And this may be a double. It will be a double. Meanwhile, Link is having to go. At Morning flashes in. Get out, Wade. He's going to get the kill. Brilliant from Link.
Big cheers coming out for them right there because they killed 4 members of TPA, and the gank tries to come in from Wins. Can Link escape?
He's do a lot of damage. The Fear's pretty much going to seal his fate there, and that's a good reaction back from Wins. But in the meantime, Cloud9 pushed and took the turret.
Honestly, you kind of have to question why that Nocturne ult wasn't burned during any of the big fights which they just lost. It would have been rather useful for them. Cloud9 completely beat TPA and Wins to the punch, getting those kills, and now they're trying to take down this Dragon before TPA can make it, but they started it a little bit late. This could lead to a team fight.
This could lead to disaster if they're not careful. There is the Dragon going down, goes over to Cloud9. Meteos forced to flash, didn't want to risk. Jay coming in, super mega death rocket. Again, so very close. 60 HP left there. 60 HP is enough.
BB has been so unfortunate with those super mega death rockets, not quite finishing off twice now. That would have been huge for his overall scaling in this game because he's picked himself what needs to be a bit of a hyper carry. He doesn't have the big protection on this team with that Jinx.
Turning back for TPA though. That's their first one of the game. Still low scoring when we look at turrets and how the meta really is, but with that said, we have been seeing more and more of our older 2v2 standard lanes with the top laners facing off against each other, which I think Cloud9 aren't too unhappy about. They feel strong in their 2v2, and they know that Balls is always going to have basically a 2v1 lane because Meteor spends so much time there.
And when it's mattered most for Cloud9, they've actually been best at the standard laning phase games. I think back to their NALCS finals against Team Solomid, and they played all 3 games as standard as the lanes come. They've also wanted to do that in their games here at the All-Star.
Oh, Lemon Nation, how fast are you? Very fast, apparently. Manages to get the damage down. Morning going low here. The calling comes through. Winter's dead. Shockwave comes in. Meteos actually picking that one up. Gets the killing spree. Sneaky's taking the outer turret. Will they go for the inner? LeBlanc is so very low. There's no defense there for them.
Cloud9 is really starting to take control, fully invading the jungle right now. They have left the bottom lane slightly exposed, but it's because they took so many more advantages on the rest of the map. They are trying to take advantage now of that Ravenous Hydra Lee Sin and the pressure he can potentially create, knowing Achi can't go back to that top lane safely.
And he's in the mid, just pushing that one out there, giving that cover and making sure that there was no fast push on towards the inner tower. Bebe was thinking about recalling there. I think actually he turns around onto Sneaky. He's got a super mega death rocket. Here is Meteos though, and Sneaky just backs away. Meteos tanks up the rocket, and that's a kill for nothing. And a turret in the top lane from Balls.
I really feel like Sneaky took advantage of BB's need to carry games right there, because that was an unsafe fight to engage in for BB, even if he can win a 1v1. Sneaky knew he had Meteos in the back pocket. Classic bait, but it really preyed on the instincts of BB.
Oh, Lemon Nation, are you going to go down? That's a lot of damage from Morning. In the end, they spotted Meteos around the side. He's like, no, I can't really go that deep. Here is Balls, though. He's going to have 2 men coming around. That's a good finding. There's the third as Winds comes in. Can Balls get away from this one? He's feared up for what surely feels like a day. Kicks one back. Doesn't get the knock up onto Winds. Flashes away from the binding. But there's the paranoia. His life stealing like a boss. But it's not enough to keep him alive. And now Meteos 1v1 against Morning. Morning just using the distortion to get away. But that wasn't a close duel.
No, that was Meteos popping out of stealth and nearly taking down Morning. Morning has started to fall behind in this game. In fact, he's going for the Deathfire Grasp LeBlanc build, which is single target. And this near escape by Balls it didn't seem like it was going to come. He really looked dead to rights. Dark Binding into Fear. Finally, he can start running away. The kickback just barely missed Wins, but then he still had the flash, making the ult burn. And if he would have juked this last Duskbringer by Nocturne, he very well may have escaped.
I give Balls his due. He was in the right direction to juke it there.
Yeah.
But he was just too close, so that point blank, a little bit easier for him to land. Here's Cloud9 again up by the Baron area, and again on the clear out mission. See that Link doing a lot more damage than before. Needlessly large rod. I want to actually compare that build over with Morning, who's gone for that very much blow up a single target with the DFG after his Athenes.
I kind of question it right now for Morning. I know that Faker's favorite LeBlanc build is the death cap afterwards, and he still manages to assassinate people because LeBlanc just has a lot of single target damage by default, but the wave clear and the map pressure in the team fight of the death cap is just that much higher. He's going to maybe use the Deathfire Grasp to get rid of Lee Sin when he dives in, because honestly the tank line of Cloud9 isn't extremely tanky, they're just fairly tanky, and if they can get the Lee Sin down through the Banshees Veil, maybe they could take him out. But it kind of just, to me, screams that he's behind in the game and still trying to get enough damage to kill even one person.
Feeling maybe a little bit desperate, as we saw while we're looking at Sneaky and Bebe there in that mid lane. The fight that was baited earlier on, Sneaky was at half HP, but with a Bloodthirster, a Zeal, and a Phage, and was saying, okay, I can still fight you here. This is a fight that I want to take. Meteos came in there, and that was the 4th assist, actually, for Sneaky. He's not quite been as lucky here in terms of picking up kills. That was a very close hook to landing on towards Jay, and look at that, Bebe and Sneaky having a bit of an encounter underneath the turret. Here comes the Paranoia. They're going in for Link. Have they got the damage here? They will do with that DFG. Actually, it wasn't even used, so forget about that one, but they get the kill nonetheless.
And that was just Wins burning his ultimate right there to finish off Link. The question then remains, can TPA make advantage of that? Because with the Nocturne ult down, a lot of their team fight initiation would be lost. And if they don't make anything happen, I feel like Link is going to be all right with that death.
So TPA themselves, after that kill, just trying to get a bit more control back over the Baron area. As Morning coming in. He does definitely hurt, there's no doubt about that.
But imagine if that was a death cap. Sneaky would have been much closer to death off of that one and far more scared back. He didn't even use the DFG in their actual kill. So he's got to pick up his game still.
Certainly have to press those actives if you're going to go that route, that's for sure. Sneaky just backed away after taking that damage and comes back off towards the lane. Balls, as he said before, the Banshee's Veil now in there for him as well, which is going to prevent either the first binding coming in, whatever the CC that could be landed from around it, part of the burst from Morning as well, which will completely break his combo. In the meantime, with Balls putting down all this pressure in the enemy jungle, they've basically just snuck straight in there and they're taking the dragon. And
I also think the death cap has been completed by Link will be something that Cloud9 uses to force more of the game here. When they play these solo lanes, they're actually pretty good at taking the game to late game, or they have been. But that's when they have a Jax in the top lane. With the Lee Sin in the top lane right here, they're actually on a bit more of a timer. They're not going to win by as much because Morning will eventually get to a point where he just kind of kills Sneaky. I want to see how Cloud9 can make decisive moves now to win the game and not just know that they're going to be better late game.
I want to mention second item finished for Bebe, picking up the Last Whisper, that's the name of it, almost forgot somehow for a second there, on top of his Bloodthirster. Other side, of course, earlier on, definitely the Trinity Force was finished by Sneaky as his second item coming into this one. If you look at the junglers as well, very similar, in fact, almost identical build routes at this point. There's a hook coming through. It's going to force them away from the tower. Good leash coming in down towards Lemon Nation. Meteor's going to take a bit of burst, but it's Jay that they really want from this one. Here comes Wins diving to the back. The Colin is ripping him to pieces. Wins is super low. Balls goes in. It's Aoki that's coming in from the back, though, and Sneaky's trying to run away. He's on his own, completely isolated. The rest of the team is low. Link is going down very low. Gets the kill as he dies as well. The flash on towards Morning, and that will be a 4 for 2 for Cloud9.
And that was a little bit messy. TPA always seems to be so close to winning these team fights in all of their games, and then because they've lost and made some mistakes early on, they just don't have the gold and the strength to actually win them. This gives Cloud9 the inhibitor.
Inhib going down, the first one of the game. Good push through from that one, and I want to go back to the point that you just made, that they've looked close each time.
Yeah.
I'll make my point in a second because he's not fighting again.
I mean, look exactly how close this one is. Lemon Nation got killed, and they get a reset for BB, so he can fly into the fight here with all the ultimates being used. And when Renekton came in, it looked like this fight was going to be turned, but they just didn't have the straight-up strength. BB couldn't quite finish off balls. Link came in from a flank, got a bunch of damage on it, and then TPA just kind of ended up having to fall back. If they were a little bit stronger, if there was a Phantom Dancer actually finished onto BB, or a Death Cap onto Morning instead of that DFG, because just damage-wise overall for the fight, they might have been able to turn that. All the low-health people on Cloud9 ended up steaming through and getting the inhibitor.
So back to my point then, because we've seen from TPA some moments of very, very promising signs.
Moments of brilliance.
We've seen moments of brilliance from them, but they've only been moments. We've not seen consistent, time after time, top level team fights, decision-making from them. And you've got to feel that that's going to be costing them, or has cost them already in the games that they lost.
Yeah, inconsistency is unacceptable on a stage such as this with so many great teams around. Your mistakes will get punished. Maybe that's one of the big reasons their semifinals against TPS went to all 5 games. Their finals against HQ went to all 5 games. They are an inconsistent team that has moments of brilliance and moments of failure. Just too many moments of failure to actually win games here.
Oh, and this could be a moment of failure. Wins is not really paying attention to that one. Damage coming his way. Actually dives onto Lemon Nation. Renekton at the back is doing good damage, but will fall in the end. And that will be a 1-for-1 trade, but it's going to keep going. Balls in the middle of the team. Is wrecking faces. Morning goes down. 3 of TPA do manage to escape. Cloud9, though, only losing the 1. With the champions left, they're going to go Baron, surely.
Exactly. 2 main carries down for TPA. Just the support. Lemon Nation is absolutely fine with dying on this one if it means the Baron for his team. Everyone on TPA had to go back to base. Baron completely uncontested.
I want to go back all the way to before the start of this game and TPA's publicly disclosed game plan.
Yeah.
Stop Meteos from doing his business. 606 Meteos.
It didn't work. They weren't able to stop him from doing his business. And let's just take one more look at this fight, because Meteos leading the charge actually uses ultimate on the back line because the front line could be dealt with by Cloud9. They kept very good range of Renekton and then could just all come in afterwards. Balls wasn't even there at the start of the fight. Lands the Q, decides to go in and really just keep TPA occupied so that they could clean up Morning. They isolate him on the side, sneaky focuses. They still have the good in-fight play from those guys, and it ends up giving them a bear.
Yeah, Balls is definitely looking a shade better than their loss against SKT yesterday. 4-1-5, you see they're so at home with the build that he's got there with the Randuin's on, with that Ravenous Hydra. And all the lifesteal you saw in the middle of the fight is tanky enough to hold him off. And he's lifestealing away anyway whilst doing good amounts of damage. So Balls definitely is, as you mentioned yesterday, the carry top laner that really Cloud9 needing to be. He seems to be getting back into that role here today.
And he's really bouncing back from the really tough game he had against SKT. He was pretty happy at the end. He did kill Faker and make him miss a bunch of skill shots, so he did say it was worth on social media. And speaking of social media, actually, it was made public by TPA early on in the All-Star when they were scrimming Cloud9. They 3-0'd them in one of the scrim sets. But what was unknown to the public is the next day, Cloud9 scrimmed them and 3-0'd them back. So it just kind of goes to show you how game time and scrim time can be so much different, and the results can vary because scrims are so strange. It's very, very foolish to take scrim results at face value and say one team is better, because Cloud9 is better here.
Cloud9 going in for the inhib turret. The TP was aimed out there, and well, they killed the turret before that could actually happen, and now with the inhib in the middle lane respawning, they're just going to go straight for that one. Balls gets hit with a binding, but as I said before, he just lifesteals that back up instantly. They take down inhibitor number 2 there, as we see. Aki is in the top lane, tried to recall back, to teleport back in towards his base, but in the end, can't really do anything apart from shove this lane down. We should also mention in turrets here, 2 is what TPA have been able to pick up, not being able to hold with Cloud9 on that front.
And their team as a whole actually isn't that good at sieging or playing the lane game. They're trying to go in for a dragon here. That's a big mistake.
They are far too late for the dragon. Wins dives in, but he is squishy as you like. They finish him off pretty much instantly. Jay is low. Jay is dead here. It's Meteos that picks up that one. Renekton coming in from the side with his Dominus running. Decides I can't even fight this one. Link's gonna go for Pepe. The shockwave gets him, and now they focus on towards Renekton, who's going down slowly but surely, and that, my friend, is going to be an ace here because Morning is trying to get away, and Ball says, no you don't. Cloud9 are going to push through here and go for the win.
They just finished this game after getting the lead. The crowd erupts. Cloud9 gets the second win.
And that is the victory that basically sets TPA up for a showdown later on in the day with Fnatic. That is, of course, if Fnatic don't beat SK Telecom T1 later, that could really turn things at the bottom of the groups a little bit more interesting. But for now, it's Cloud9 here that have got the job done. They go 2-1 in the table.
And that was just Cloud9 bouncing back very well from their defeat to SKT yesterday. It's going to be a question here on how well Cloud9 does when things go according to plan and how well they can adapt to change, because this is another game that went very according to plan to them. They got the standard lanes, which minimized the amount of movements they had to make around the map, which is their weakness without High, because they have inexperienced time together as far as never really playing with Link before this event. This game worked great though. 2 wins, that means they move on. And
we saw that Meteos, they actually, Cloud9 themselves banned out the Elise. Funnily enough, after all those games in a row where Meteos, I think it was 7 in a row, 5 from playoffs, 2 from Euro AllStars, they banned